The Wild Tameless is about expanding our sphere of awareness into greater fields of consciousness. Our guests share their wisdom found from branching out into the unseen realms through alternative philosophy and mystical experiences. We focus on the soul component of the human experience and also touch on mind, body, and heart as we introduce pragmatic practices to create a meaningful and fulfilling life. We touch on modalities of health, ceremony, and ritual to help people harmonize their own energy and open up to the magic around them. The Wild Tameless is nature. It's the human spirit. It's music, art, and creation itself. This podcast is about helping people open to the great mystery so that we can collectively remember our place in the web of life and reorient our way forward for generations to come. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Kyle Dow. All right, welcome everybody. It is my pleasure today to be joined by my good friend Gaia. And normally I begin these podcasts by asking my guest what their current setting is, because I've always been doing these remotely, but it feels a little bit redundant since we're in person. So instead of asking that question, I will ask you, what is most present for you in the moment or these days in life in general?
Well, I just returned from a pretty epic pilgrimage to France. So right now there's the energy of the divine feminine really alive with me right now. And it feels like there's a different layer of earth that has exposed itself to me of our reality. And so I'm just sitting with that and integrating that. And I've been checking in after the high of being in France for 3 weeks. Like, does that close? Is that going to close? Am I going to return to a smaller version of myself? And just watching those old limiting thoughts play and not giving them space. Like, no, you can go through initiations and be in a completely different perspective and internal reality, and life can kind of look the same sometimes. So yeah, that's what's alive for me right now.
I like that contemplation of will the contraction follow the expansion? Because that's kind of like the cycle. And that was Ram Dass's pursuit to not come down off the peak of the mountain. So typically when we have a ceremonial experience, that is a high point. And then there is kind of a normalization that occurs afterwards. And you're feeling that this is a bit different. You're going to remain in that connected state.
So the difference is, like, when I first came home, every breath felt like a gratitude. Like, I was like, oh, thank you, mountains. Thank you to each person. Like, I could, without effort, see God in every moment, the goddess in every moment, the magic, the mystery that weaves through the material world. And since being home, I'm being real with myself that it does take a practice. It does take discipline, and it takes a moment of connecting in every day, if that's through yoga or a run or a mindset or a meditation. It does take effort on my part to keep the energy of divine at the forefront of my moment-to-moment perspective. And that's something I've played with throughout my life. Like, how important are those daily practices? Can we just slip into this place and stay there for the rest of our lives? And we're up against a really strong gravitational pull in the third dimension. And we're bombarded by our senses. We're bombarded by distraction. And we have all this history, too, of viewing it from a more limited perspective. So where I sit today, I do believe that having a daily practice is really important. And yeah, that's something coming home from France I've really committed to.
Beautiful. Well, we'll hear a little bit more about your journey in France and what transpired. But how about you tell us a little bit about your background and your kind of like life path to this point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will try to sum up 44 years in 10 minutes or less. Key point being, I think there's a certain relationship to spirit and to what we'll call the divine that I was born with. And my play as a kid was imaginative play. It was with what I'll call now as my guides. And I would say that I was an extremely sensitive, avatar like human being that was born. And because we're creators and we're quite smart, I learned at a really young age that I was a bit different, and I made myself believe that something was wrong with me. And so I did my best to shut that off and try to fit into the collective that I was born into. I tried to fit into my sister, who seemed to integrate into this culture very well. I tried to integrate with friends and assimilate or like copy them that seemed to be integrating into the society. And from a young age, I thought I'm just going to ride this lifetime out. I thought it was a mistake. I was convinced that my skin was the wrong color. I was born in the wrong time. There was some incarnational mishap, and I was going to ride it out and go back to my people the next life. And I had a lot of fear as a child because of my sensitivity. And I would say that the most important breaking point for me was in my early 20s, around 21, 22, where I went through an experience when I lived in San Francisco where all of my chakras spontaneously opened at the same time. And I became really clairvoyant. I could see into the past and into the future. I could see that every lifetime was happening right now. I had a very strong connection into the Star Nation, into the Galactic Federation, which are just different dimensions of reality, in my opinion, now. And that was a pretty monumental shift for me to break free from the confines of the society that I was born into. And that experience actually put me into what the medical system calls a psychosis. I went through the hospital. I went through a year of being at the whim of the matrix. And throughout that time, there were things that happened that I couldn't deny that were a spiritual emergence. And at that time, I really didn't have context for the Galactic Federation. I didn't have context for spiritual emergence. I didn't have context for these dimensions other than my childhood experiences. So it was very scary to the people around me. And there was a thread in me, though, an inner thread, pulling from your shirt, that I knew something special had happened. I felt amazing. I felt free for the first time in my life, and I felt the magic of the earth, and I felt my mission. I felt these connections happening. They were undeniable. And even my mom will look back after what was a really scary experience for her and my father and say something shifted in you. And it led me on a path that has become the path that I walk. From that experience, what I learned is you don't want to pop too quick. And because I was also holding the trauma of my past incarnations that haven't been balanced, and also my family's trauma, my root system was mangled. And so when I went into that heightened experience, there was no grounding. And I will admit that. And I needed to ground. And intuitively, I went back to Minnesota, where my family is, which is pretty landlocked and full of minerals and hunters and gatherers. And I started to learn about grounding. And I studied massage. I got my Reiki attunements, and somewhere in that period of being home, maybe 3 to 4 years, now the next step was put in front of my path. And that vision was to go to New Mexico. And I guess I felt free to follow those inner visions because of that awakening that happened, and the guides that came to visit me, the clairvoyance and clairsentience that was happening, claircognizance that was happening. Like, there was no denying. I mean, I would tell you a zillion stories of what happened during that time that could not deny that I was tapped into something that I wasn't tapped into before, that even the doctors couldn't make sense of. They're like, how did you know that? And because I was tapped into something. But without that grounding, it becomes psychosis or schizophrenia or neurosis. It isn't, you're not able to anchor that here in the body, in this dimension. And that's what I believe that we're meant to be doing. That's what I'm meant to be doing. And when I moved to New Mexico, I started studying energy medicine there. And very quickly, when I had moved there, I had someone come onto my table that I recognized as a medicine person without them having to say anything. And I recognized this person from my awakening, and I recognized them on a soul level. And I believe that if things are your destiny, you won't miss it. It'll come to you. Mm-hmm. I also believe that, you want to prepare for those opportunities. And I think that's important. And that's where the discipline comes in the daily prayers, the daily connection, so that when these opportunities come in, you have eyes to see and ears to hear, and courage to make a move. So I was blessed with my energy teacher. She, Jeannie Swansea, Jeannie Kerrigan, she went back to her maiden name, and she's in the spirit world now. I was telling her about it, and she was adopted into the Lakota tradition. She was the powerhouse of it as a healer and a ceremonialist, and I feel so blessed to have that divine feminine example. Great teacher. She could move any energy. And so I was all excited telling her about this man that came onto my table, and she told me that that was her spiritual brother, and that we would be doing a sweat lodge on his land in 1 week as a class. And this time we were in a different energetic exchange. Like, the first time he came to me for a massage, so he was in the place of receiving and I was in the place of giving. So energetically, it wasn't a line for me to ask for anything. It was just a gift, which is a big spiritual lesson when we do this work, actually. In France, that was a big lesson for me. And I'll weave there in a bit, but it opened a door when I made an offering not wanting anything in return. And then the most magical door of France opened after that. And it wasn't because there was an expectation. I had no idea. It wasn't even on my radar. And I just wanted to give and say thank you, whoever you are. Great mystery. So a week later, we did a sweat lodge on his land, and Jeannie and Archon led it. And this time we both recognized each other. And now our path began. And
So Archon was the man that was on your table?
Yes.
And you were then at his lodge?
Then I was at his lodge. Yeah. And it was the first lodge that I had ever been into. And it was with my class, and Jeannie and Archon led it. And it was the first time in my life something struck me so deeply, where I thought, that is the most beautiful thing in the world. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to sit there. Like, I want to sit where they sit. Like, to me, that was the first time I was inspired by a path or a career, you could say. And it's so fun to look back and remember that feeling of how magical and how lucky I felt to be in that moment, and to be invited into this sacred place of ceremony and indigenous teachings. Yeah, it was a super big deal.
So let's unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
Because you're saying the lodge and you're referring to the sweat lodge, and you're saying to be in their position. And some people might not have context for how that ceremony is orchestrated.
Okay.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about the sweat lodge?
Sure. So this sweat lodge is a very ancient tradition. I can't really say where exactly it comes from, if it's the Lakota people.
I think it's practiced in many different cultures. There's different variations. So like the Temazcal would be the version of it in Mexico. And historically, every culture, it seems, that has some variation of sweating, right? So it's a process of purification.
Yeah.
And so this particular one's done in the Lakota tradition.
Yeah, it was, yes. And you have 4 doors. Each door represents a different energy. There
4 doors, so 4 rounds.
Yes, thank you.
There's one door that you crawl into.
Yes.
Into this dome-like structure.
You might be better at explaining that part.
Okay, and then I'll pass it back over to you. Yeah. So it is a dome-like structure that's covered with blankets and sometimes tarps, and it has a small entrance. So the participants crawl into it, and there's a lodge holder who is the one who pours the water on the hot rocks. And the hot rocks are heated in a fire for typically several hours so that they're glowing red hot.
Yeah.
And so the fire is outside of the lodge. The rocks get transported into the center of the lodge.
Yeah.
And then once the rocks are in each round, then the door gets closed. So it becomes pitch black in there, except for the glowing of the rocks. And that's when the round begins. And so the lodge holder is the person who has the water bucket in front of them, and they're pouring the water on the rocks as the process of purification occurs amongst prayers and song and other happenings in there. And so maybe you could speak more to those happenings and the role of the lodge keeper.
So, yeah, it's a big honor to be a lodge keeper. That honor was passed to me, and I find that to be one of the most sacred blessings of my life, really based on that first lodge, when that was my heart's song to sit in that place. And the lodge keeper is, I would say, an intermediary between the energy of the everything and the people. So the lodge keeper that pours the water opens his or her awareness to hold space for any of the healings or happenings that happen within the lodge. So it's important to have a really pure connection, a really pure intention, and it's really helpful to have some training. In the lodge, in the beginning, there's songs, there's traditional songs that open the energies and call the spirits. The lodge itself is a symbol of creation of the universe. So the fire outside the lodge being the sun, and inside being the womb. There's a pit where the rocks come in. And when the fire is through the rocks are brought in and the water fertilizes the rocks, now we're in the energy of creation. So it's really important in this place that you present yourself to the creator. Like, who are you? You do your best to not let your mind go into suffering. It's like you show up and you do your best and you speak from your heart. You allow yourself to be stripped of any protective mechanisms and you pray. And it's a really beautiful place where miracles do happen, healings happen. There's spirits that are connected to the songs that do come There's spirits that are connected to the lodge keeper that would change the dynamic of the lodge. There's spirits that are connected to everyone that comes into the lodge that could change the dynamic of the lodge too. And you sweat. Part of the idea with the lodge is that you get to this crescendo of you can't hold on anymore. There's no point. It's like you don't know if it's going to get hotter, and you let go. So there's an opportunity when you come out to like be reborn to whatever you brought into that lodge. It is laid to rest. You welcome the new day and your new self, and you begin again. And as a person, like every day we're interacting and kind of absorbing things. And so it's important to have mini cleanses like our discipline in the morning, but it's also important to have the bigger oil change and the bigger remembrance. And there's something so beautiful of doing that in a group setting. It's very family. It feels like your family. And I've had, one of my biggest healings in a lodge with Archon when, I'll tell you this quick little story. I told you I'm a storyteller. I could go off, but this one's fun. They're all fun. And there was one lodge. I love to be a participant. I love to pour, but I really love just to go along for the ride and to say my prayers and just to be in the presence of someone that can really conduct the energy. I think it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful to me. And so in this one lodge, I had been working on my throat chakra and working with Jeannie as a healer. I was in the somatic polarity program and dreaming about it. And in this dream the night before, I had a dream that I tried out for American Idol. You gotta love the dream time. And I sang some like rap song. And the judges were like, you're never gonna like win the title, but good job. You did it. And this is like after a slew of dreams where like I was past a feather and I froze and I couldn't say anything. So I had been working on this for a while. And it like brings tears to my eyes because I was so like stuck in my throat. It's so like, I just squeezed my little old self. And in this particular lodge, Archon being a medicine man, it's the third round, which is the power round, the healing round. And he asks for someone to sing. I'm like, oh God, no, don't pick me. I did it in my dreams. I don't have to do it 3D. So I tried to make myself small in the lodge, but this is like the role of the lodge keeper, right? They're aware, they feel, and he's a medicine man. So it's like, it's even more something, I feel. And my birth name is Tara, so he calls me Tata. He goes, Tata, do you have a song to sing? I was like, oh, damn it. And I said, in my fear, right? I've learned a lot from my fear. And I said, I don't know any songs. And I literally heard the spirits in the lodge go, oh, like they were, what's that word when they're like condescending or it felt condescending, like, oh, you poor thing. Like you want healing, but it's offered to you and you won't take it. And it just felt like that. And I was like, that feels worse than saying no. Like that felt worse. And Archon being a seer knew to give me another chance. And he said, and I needed another chance. And he said, so sing a song you don't know. Wise, right? And I thought, okay, I missed the first opportunity. I'm not going to miss this one. This is where the healing happens. It's not just in my dreams. It's not just in the etheric, in the astral. You have to bring it through the eye of the needle in the physical. And that's my biggest fear, is to like be witnessed and to cry and to like have weakness maybe. And so I sang this like Janis Joplin inspired song about the mountains, and it was like bluesy, and I just like ripped it. and just made it up and just bawled my eyes out after. And I said to him, like, and then once we got out of the lodge, I just bawled more because it was so much tension and past and fear and desire and wish too, like all wrapped up in this moment. And I said, like, so after I cried behind the stone for a while, I put myself together a little and just said, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for asking me twice. And after that, like I sang a song before we started, like, you know, like it took me 10 years to learn my first song and to sing it. Now it's like, if I really love this song, I don't know, 24 hours, 48. And so that's like the magic of the lodge. And those are the moments that I was like, wow, just wow. You know, those are like wow moments of a special human being and an inspiration in myself to grow myself that way. And so that was, so at Arawaca, the ceremonial community in Ribera, which is an hour and a half south of Santa Fe, I did my vision quest through under the altar of Arawaca, two not at Arawaca. I did one in my 4-day in Peru under a man named Freddie, but at the same altar, Archon was there. And then my 7-day I did at Arawaca, and then my 9-day I did with Marina in Morelia, Mexico. And this was after my son was born. And as a woman, I found it really important to sit under a woman.
So we have to unpack more things.
Okay. And I did want to say one thing before we unpack is that it leads to like the first question you asked, this divine feminine that is alive and palpable in me right now. Like this has been a prayer that I've laid down like a long time ago.
So you had the experience in the sweat lodge, and then that led you to pursue that way of life. So that brought you to these vision quests. And so people, when you're seeing these numbers of 4-day and 7-day and 9-day, people probably, or some people might not know what those days consist of.
Yeah.
So
like what is a vision quest?
Yeah. So I think it's important to come back to that, maybe that 9-day after you were a mother at that point. But maybe speak to what a vision quest actually consists of.
Okay. And just to finish, the last one was 13 days. So traditionally, I believe in the Lakota way, it's 4-year commitment, 4 days, 4 nights. Each spiritual leader has some dominion to be able to change that. So I think it's important to know, like if you're sitting with someone, you follow their rules. Like you don't come in there with your know-it-all attitude. And because people do things differently. You can hear the same song sung a dozen different ways depending on where you are in the world or, you know, whose lodge you're in. So it's important just to come in and listen and see how you can help. So a 4-day vision quest consists of 4 nights and 4 days with no food, no water. Disclaimer, some people might do it a little differently. My experience was no food, no water. You go with what you're wearing and a blanket or 2 blankets. That's it. And your prayer. So when you first start a vision quest, you might not have a sacred pipe or a chanupa. You might have tobacco rolled in corn husk, but you have some vehicle to pray with, something that is blessed in connecting you from your limited self into the unlimited self, this bridge. And there's a whole community that comes together to support the vision quest. There's a fire that is nonstop. There are people cooking and praying, and it's a community affair. I mean, you're alone for those 4 days and 4 nights in what's called a hochika, which is your sacred circle, surrounded by prayer ties that you have created from tobacco, and depending on the year, like we change colors each year. And you're there in the elements, in your mind or in your prayer, like you are with yourself and with nature, with the divine, and there is great opportunity in these moments. The spirits know that you're sitting there. Even if you don't see them, they know that you're sitting there, and they are looking at you. And sometimes those seeds sprout right away, and sometimes they can take years to sprout. And then in the tradition that I followed, so after the 4 days and 4 nights, like whoever's staying for 7, now you're given a bit of provision. And then which is a liter of water and some fruit and maybe a vegetable, like very minimal. And after those 7 days come down, then who's still left, the 9 and 13 get some provisions, and then the 9 comes down and the 13 gets something. So there is something to sustain your physical body, and there's an opportunity to have many deaths while you're there. Ideally, yeah, you want to die quick. Die quick, let it go, let the internal fight of whatever go, and open up to every single thing has meaning now. Everything is a gift for you. Do you have eyes to see? Do you have ears to hear? Each Vision Quest experience is going to be totally different. Yeah. The 9-day, I had my son at that point. Yeah, it was hard. Yeah, because my heart, it's like my heart breaks just remembering. My heart wanted to be with him. And I also had this commitment to a spiritual path that I felt would serve his future, would serve me as a mom, if I could pray in these ways and follow through with this commitment, that I would be a better mom. So a little bit of a dip would have a better arc. That was my intention, my wish. I think this path is difficult for moms and for women because we are the everything to our children. Yeah, it was a hard vision quest that has its story within itself, but I'll be mindful of all the stories I tell.
I think it's amazing that you did all of those different vision quests. So the 4-day, 7-day, 9-day, and 13-day. And I just recently did my first vision quest, which was 4 days and 3 nights. And so I'm thinking about this idea of dying quickly, as you say. Mm-hmm. And so there's typically these practices, I mean, historically were done as rites of passage or initiations. So the idea is that we literally allow part of ourselves to die so that we could evolve. And maybe that's more symbolic, is a better way to make sense of it. So allowing the adolescent to die so that we mature into adulthood. And so there's a process of being a child, then an adolescent, and then an adult and an elder. And Bill Plotkin has this model, this ecological model of that progression of evolution. And he suggests that the majority of people haven't made it past adolescence. They don't make it past adolescence in this human lifetime. And so that means that we have a bunch of adolescent people running the world. And we could see how this can be detrimental. So the idea of dying symbolically out there happens over the course of the process, but to die quickly means to relinquish our physical and egoic attachments to what we think we need, because it is a process of asceticism to be out there on the land and going without food, without water, and in your case, without shelter. In my case, I did have a tarp for a little bit of shelter. And I remember on the first 2 days having the instinct to reach for water, the instinct to reach for food. And that's just my biological process. Like, hey, you should be drinking water right now. And on those first 2 days, I was really tired and lethargic and like weak feeling. And then by day 3, something shifted. So it was like I was no longer operating, or I was operating less in the physical and more in the spiritual. And as my spiritual body came alive, I could go without these things that I thought I needed. And so by day 4, I was originally, I was like, how am I going to get off this mountain? Like, if I feel so weak on day 2. And by day 4, since I was inspirited, I was full of energy. I was invigorated, and I was able to trot down the mountain merrily. And so it was beautiful to see that progression. And that's the point of these initiations and ceremony, is to bring us more into that world of spirit.
Yeah, and bring spirit more into us. Yeah, consciously. And I think that's a great indicator when someone comes off the hill, if they have energy or not, because the ego can sit there for 4 days and 4 nights too. The mind can sit there for 4 days and 4 nights too. But the difference is, one's going to be depleting the body and one is going to be filling the body. And it's a magical thing to witness. And it defies science too. It's like, we're taught you can only live with 3 days without food or water or something like that, or without water. And
3 days without water, 3 weeks without food.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Not true. But I wouldn't recommend it without support. It matters that fire's lit. It matters that there's someone holding the field, as you could say, even an intermediary between yourself and your Hochika and the Great Spirit, because we are, you could say, in training. Yes, the divine lives in each one of us equally, but we go through these initiations to bridge that into full embodiment. And when I think of, you say, in adolescence, it's like that, it's far away. It's too much human mind. It's too much human creation and not enough divine creation. That's what we're trying to do here. We're like evolving our human DNA so that we are awoken to our divine blueprint of what we are, which is the greatest technology on this earth. This is where the solutions of our future earth come from. And that doesn't happen by happenstance. Like, you feel inspired and you reach, and then spirit reaches for you, like the other way. And then sure, that might bring you through one initiation, but there is like countless initiations in a lifetime, countless opportunities to die and be reborn more pure of who your true nature is. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts I have received from walking the red road, is to be held by an individual that clearly has a dharma and a destiny to hold this space, and also others in that circle that hold this space in the Indigenous Red Road path. It ruined me, I would say, for some of the New Age stuff coming out, that if it doesn't have deep roots, it's hard. It's hard to, entertain it. I think can be dangerous and misleading that we want to bypass steps or think that we've already arrived to somewhere without doing the actual work in this physical life, in our life that we're living, not just a weekend ceremony, not just a medicine journey, not just an ecstatic dance, but in our day-to-day life. How are we living? How are we going to meet these initiations? And my time through Arawaka and the Red Road has one, allowed me to have a conscious relationship with the symbology of Gaia and how she speaks, and to reestablish that relationship I had as a kid that I didn't see mirrored growing up. Like, the adults around me didn't behave that way with Earth, didn't see nature that way. They may have had an appreciation, but they didn't see her as a living, sentient energy that you commune with as a friend. And being part of the Red Road, like, gave that back to me. And it normalized something that was already inherent within me, which is to pray and to talk to the divine on a daily basis as a friend. And it gave me some sort of inner strength to say yes to opportunities when they come in life. And I think those are all like really valuable things.
Yeah, absolutely. There's many different aspects, like beneficial aspects to walking the red road. So when you're speaking about finding that reconnection to the earth and that philosophy of animism, which is basically the philosophy that there's a spirit in all things. Everything has a spirit. The trees, the stones, all the different creatures. Everything has their own individual spirit, but then that's part of Great Spirit, the animating force, basically, of the earth and arguably the universe. And so to bring you back into contact with that is really beautiful. And then also this idea of courage to do challenging things, which is all like the vision quest, even the sweat lodge, the Sundance. These all take courage to lean into the discomfort, the intentional intensity that allows things to rise to the surface so we could process them and let them go, which then opens us up greater to the divine. And a lot of that has to do with devotion. It takes devotion to walk that path, and it takes devotion to be in that practice, like the daily practices that we have that allow us to be in that place of connection. And when I think of devotion, I'm also thinking of the Cathars, the story of the Cathars that you told me about, who are truly devoted to their connection with the divine. So maybe we segue into your trip to France.
my favorite story right now. Yeah. So the Cathars is an interesting group of people that there isn't a ton of information out there. It's like you can find a ton on Hinduism, on Buddhism, on Sufism, but the Cathars, it's harder to find accurate information about the Cathars. And there's a reason behind that. The Cathars, I believe, had their reign in the 1100 to 1200 AD. Maybe before that too. They're considered to follow the like esoteric Christianity. Mary Magdalene is connected to the esoteric Christianity. During the time of Mary and Yahshua, there was no such thing as Christianity, but for context, it lets us understand what does that mean. It means that the Caesar is within, the fight is within, everything begins from within. Be pure within, and you'll have a pure connection. There's no one that has dominion over that. And Cathar translates into pure one. And they themselves would go through initiations. So even if you were in the community of a Cathar and you lived by these virtues, really, which is to do the will of the divine, whatever we want to call the energy of God that permeates everything. They're like, we are the same, essentially. Let me do your will here on earth more than the mind's will or any other will. Let me live the will of the Creator. And so they would go through initiations during their purification process into becoming one with the everything. So even what I spoke about with the sweat lodges and following this hero's journey, like you will go through so many different initiations in your life. Some you'll look back and, was quite a remarkable thing. And you have all these other smaller initiations, but it's part of the journey, and you don't get there from buying it. You don't get there from bypassing it. Like it is a lived, walked experience, and you don't get it from the medicine ceremony either. Like you walk it in your sober life and you become one with the energy. So the Cathars, I learned about them really the first time I went to France last September. And I knew that there was a prophecy that in 700 years, the Cathars would return to the south of France, which would be now and 80 years prior. So we're in this time of the prophecy. I went back to France 9 months after my first time there. And something happened to me in France the first time. The short story is my head and my womb went like this. So my head used to dictate all kinds of things of survival, of fear, of logic, and rational thinking. And my womb cleared something so ancient that my consciousness could reside there again. And it changed my life, you could say. And I was at home. So this is kind of how the everything, which we are, speaks to us, each in our own unique way, because we are unique, as is our relationship to the everything. And I was at home and I had this beautiful mirror behind my front entry door with this black, like beautiful design. Had been there for a year. A month after France, it falls and breaks. And so I'm pretty high still from my experience in France and this connection to the land and to my womb and to listening. Then I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means. It's not a negative thing, but something wants my attention. This is a symbol. I'm okay with that conclusion. So I pick up my mirror and I'm going to put it in the trash. Open the door. There's a black cat right in front of my door. I'm like, okay, that's too crazy, too obvious. A broken mirror and a black cat. Someone is clearly trying to communicate with me. I've lived in that house for a year. There's never been a black cat before, never a black cat after. I'm like, I know it's not negative. Like, I don't believe in that, but something is communicating to me. So now I am walking my dog on the dike. This is all these symbols are within a 24-hour, maybe a 48-hour period, like very short. It was just like blatantly obvious from my guides, the creator of my higher self, whatever you want to call it. And so now I'm on the dike walking my dog, and I know all the dogs on the dike too, for the most part. And for the first time ever, there's a white puppy Great Pyrenees, which comes from the Pyrenees region of the south of France, which the Cathars are connected to, and Mary Magdalene is very woven into the tapestry of that energy there, as are the Celts and the Druids, and I'm sure more behind that. So I'm like, okay, noted. I need to go back to France. And that was clear as day. I pick up my son from the Lions Bay bus stop after school, and I'm early. So I go to the Lions Bay store, killing time. Right when I walk in the back corner, there's the mirror I just broke with a gold background. And I'm like, no way. Like, okay, this is all too weird. And so I go back there thinking I would buy it, and I'm upgrading from black to gold because my mind's kind of trying to connect the dots. Like it's making an attempt. And it's just kind of what the mind does. It's starting to like, oh, I'm just upgrading. Oh, it was an upgrade from France, whatever. And I see the mirror is not for sale. It's so that you can try on jewelry and look at the mirror. And so I look at the jewelry, and the first thing I see is a Cathar cross. I'm like, okay, I get it now. Like there's this connection to the Cathars. And I'll fast forward to once I'm in France for the second time within 9 months.
So that's this year, the trip you just got
back. Yeah. I just got back a week, like 10 days ago or something. And I, at the time, felt like this one mountain, Bucharest, called me back. And I really wanted to make an offering on this mountain. That was like super clear. I didn't get to hike it the last time. I was like, I need to, this mountain had an effect in me. I want to go have an experience with it. And that day on Bucharest, I went through 3 different cleansing initiations that were all quite mystical and magical, of the mountain merging with me. You could even say before I went up the mountain, I had a mystical experience with the mountain in my dreams. And there was something happening. It was really clear to me on that pilgrimage just up Bucharest not to take anything. Don't take a stone. Don't ask for help. Nothing. Like, this is only for Bucharest. And I know from other people that live in the area, they felt like certain sacred sites would be depleted after the pilgrimage season because everyone would come and want something. Pray, oh, help me. I need this, help so-and-so. And they wouldn't know the history of the place, nor would they meet it equally of what can I give you? You know, like, we're in this exchange. I give you tobacco. It's like we give each other energy. I don't just come asking for what can you give me, you know? The mountain is like that too. The spirit is like that. All spirits are like that. It's something on the red road that is really woven into the tapestry and fabric of the way. And it is the way. It is like we are always in reciprocity. And the mind, you know, goes into the survival of what do I need to survive. Like, that's a part of our evolution to move beyond it. And I have been there. It's so stressful. It's not fun. I've lived that way. It's terrible for the body. It's terrible for relationships. It's terrible for the earth. And if you're going to spend your time doing anything, like, let that die, you know? Like, let that die. Let yourself see what's beyond it. Let that be loose. And so at Bucharest, there's like 5 vultures that are like their eagles there, welcoming. The first spot that we stopped, the fog that was like 20 meters out came rolling in and just like fully enveloped us. And it was such a blessing and such an offering. I felt like I was inside of the spirit of the mountain now. And I thought if this was all that Bucharest was about, this was beyond expectation or wish. And now the second tier that we went to, this part was a little bit more windy. And here I had started to sing a song to the spirit. And the spirit was letting me know that it witnessed me. And so it blew stronger. And then I braced my feet and I met it and sang stronger. And then it sang stronger to me. And then we were at this like crazy crescendo of energy. And all through my body, I was like, I am not bowing down to you, not out of disrespect, but I'm meeting you as an equal. Like, I am not a little human. I'm not a little human that is suffering, that's a victim, that needs help. I'm capable. I can do this. I'm strong enough. I have courage. I have heart. I have will. I have clarity. I have faith. And I was like just singing my little heart out. And then my girlfriend gave me a stone, which was half dark, half light, the one that you felt a charge with. And I felt like, oh, yay, I got a gift that I didn't give myself. Like, it meant so much to me because I would have loved to have a memory of Bucharest besides the moment, but I wasn't going to take it. So the last bit, and this all leads to the Cathars. Like I said, I'm a bit of a storyteller, but it's so pertinent. We get almost to the top, and I realize it's not windy like the other place, but there's enough of a wind that we're not going to be able to have a fire and to burn this despacho. So I'm thinking we should go back where it was quiet in this one spot. And right when I'm thinking that, there's this perfect dugout with a stone wall, perfect for people to have a ceremony, a despacho. We did a pipe ceremony offering, and it was no prayers were for us. It was just for the mountain. You eat, you take this, you take our blessing. And it ate it all up like so fast. I knew the mountain, even though people come and they honor and they know that it's special, who feeds it? Who really feeds it? That mountain was hungry. And we must have stepped out of time and space, because when I got to the peak later, people would have had to pass us. Like, that dugout was right on the side of the path, and we didn't see them pass. They didn't see us pass. But when they passed, but logically, we would have seen each other and been curious. So I thought that was the highlight of the trip. But that was only a door that opened another door. And that night when I went to bed, it was 100% clear in my body that the cleansing and the offering happened to Bucharest, but Bucharest opened the door to go to Mount Sigur. And in the pilgrimage, I had left this window open after Bucharest, not knowing what was going to go there. I thought initially we were going to go to St. Bon, where they say that Mary Magdalene had ascended. And when the time came, it was clear that was not in the resonant energy. And so this gave us an opportunity to park ourselves next to Mount Sigur. And Mount Sigur is where the Cathars did their initiations. I'll also say that the Cathars, because they were such a threat to the Roman Church, there was a crusade put out on Friday the 13th to extinguish every single Cathar in every document you find. Man, woman, child. They wanted to eradicate any memory of the Cathars and how they connected to divinities so purely, because they wanted to be the doorway for people to be allowed in or not in.
The Romans did.
The Romans.
Yeah.
Church. Yeah. So they wanted control, and they wanted to use their tactics and their fear. And just like in the Bible, right? The Bible was written 300 years after Joshua walked and Mary walked the earth. It's important to put them together. Their rendition of the Bible left her out very intentionally, also left out the Gospel of Thomas, left out a lot of information that would empower the people to be in their own mystery school, which is life. We are in our own mystery school, right? Mm-hmm. And so at Mount Sigur, so that was Friday the 13th. So circling back around, broken mirror, black cat, like how does that not relate to the Cathars and the crusade against them with Friday the 13th? And comical, right? Like so funny, but it didn't even, like, I didn't even have that information, I think, about Friday the 13th until I was actually in France. And that's part of the pilgrimage, and not knowing and not having to know all the answers. Like, the answers will reveal themselves in the right timing, and Spirit loves to, like, just have a perfect little punchline, like, at the right moment, like, best storyteller ever. And I was like, the mirror, the cat, it, like, is so funny. And, like, here we are at Mount Sigur, which was the last stronghold of the Cathars. And the Romans tried to bridge that for 8 months. I think there were 1,000 Cathars that lived around the top of Mount Sigur. And by the end of this 8-month battle, the Romans came through the backside that was harder. Took them a couple months. They passed it, captured the last 205 Cathars, gave them an ultimatum. You can join us or be burned at the stake. Your choice. they got time to deliberate about it. And because they are pure and they know that they have never died and can never be, born, they've never been born, they've never died, like they are part of eternity, this one physical body, sure, we'll take a moment of suffering to stay in alignment with our divine knowing and our divine truth, rather than drink 1 iota of this poison, this filtered distortion of truth that you're offering the people. We'll take the stake. And the story is they went running, singing, dancing into the stake at the base of Mount Segura. And there were a few of the Cathars that did, you can say, escape. They were chosen to bring the holy knowledge out. And they may call that the Holy Grail. What is the deepest teaching? It's like woven through First Nations teaching too. And the yogic traditions is everything begins from within. Everything is inside of you. It's like simple. But they were willing to sacrifice comfort in their physical body to stay true and pure to their altruistic reality and perspective. And that's why they also said that they're coming back in 700 years. So that they were burned 1244. So 700 years from that is 1944. So we're really in the space of it still. And when we were in the South, we came across another group of 30 to 40 people that were following the Cathar prophecy, going to their sacred sites and honoring what they stood for. And there is something at Mount Segura, and I'll say there was an initiation that happened there. There is an energy there that aligns all of the cells of your reality with divinity. And if you can see it from everywhere in the valley, it is like God is shining on this hill. It's like palpable. And there's people that live around there. Like there's so many magical, interesting stories of Mount Segura and the hidden caves around Mount Segura where they would do their initiations. A really, really special place, and a place that they didn't just honor like things were very balanced for them as far as their own inner feminine and masculine qualities. And I think, honestly, the church did such a disservice by leaving Mary Magdalene, that story, out, because let's just pretend it's not true for a minute, whatever. It's still an archetype that we all know. And it's still a story that's woven into the fabric of the life that we're living now, that places the man above a woman. And I think that's part of this whole hidden divine return of the divine feminine. It's not like we come back with this raging power and we want to like crush those that had power before. Like that's an unhealed feminine energy. That's not what's happening. What's happening, I believe, is the story comes to mind about Joshua and Mary. Jesus wanted to be the king of the Jews. He was set to be king of the Jews. Peter was going to be his right-hand man. He was fighting Caesar and the Romans, creating a rebellion. His sermons were empowering the people and ultimately creating a rebellion to take the power back to the people. Here comes the energy of Mary Magdalene. And suddenly his sermon completely changes. We're not fighting anything outside of us. Like all of this everything out here is a reflection of in here. Come inside, fight the Caesar within, that's not even the right word. Like come to peace with your jealousy, come to peace with your separation, come to peace with seeing anything different than yourself as God and everyone as God. And the feminine energy rising is bringing back the magic and mystery of life, which is our birthright. It is our birthright to live in union with another, in sacred sexual union too. Like that's just been like totally degraded. And union with all of creation, and to be wed to all of creation and to treat it as a beloved. And I feel like that's the energy that's coming back, and that energy can't be controlled. It's your own unique, direct vibrational link. It is the biggest, greatest, most powerful technology that'll live on this planet, us. And yeah, makes me think of AI, but maybe that's a different topic.
Well, I think that's really beautiful, and you brought it full circle in how, another person who renounced the Catholic Church was Martin Luther. And so he was a reformist, and he said, every man his own priest, meaning that we all have that ability to connect. And that's what you're speaking to. And perhaps that's what's been like conditioned out of us, is that we are part of the divine, and that we can open to that at all times.
And that's like, bow down to Martin Luther King. Like he had it.
So Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, a different historical figure from the 1600s.
Oh, pardon. So okay.
So he was part of the Catholic Church. He was a priest, and then he's like, "This is whack." I was like, "I'm gonna get out of this," because every man is his own channel. Man, as in humanity, is their own channel to the divine.
Yes.
And so to have this intermediary is a disservice to what it's all about.
100%. And we have to be careful when we have teachers, doctors, people of authority. It's like we can't give our power to anyone or anything. Like we are each on our own hero's journey of remembering that this, like, not, yes, remembering, but living it. And the human mind can be limited. And just because someone is in power in any form of authority does not mean that they have authority over your path and your connection and how to arrive at that place. Like they may give you some metaphor that is good wisdom that you can drink, but I think that any organized religion has a really strong potential to do disservice. I have seen very beautiful people come out of organized religion, and are we putting our power somewhere else? Like even Joshua didn't want a church that people went to, It's like, don't give it to something outside of yourself. And I would say that was one of my things I often stumbled upon my path on the Red Road, and as a woman and a woman connected to spirit, is I was so quick to give it away to anyone that I thought had something. Because I was an eager student, but I also didn't believe in myself in the way that I would teach my children to, in the way that I would want someone else to believe in themselves. And life gives you your initiations. I went through a super strong initiation to reclaim my power. That is like a messy, challenging, dramatic story. But at the end of it, I was like, I am enough. I'm not doing this anymore. Mission accomplished. Like, thank you. That took 14 years. But thank you. Like, I got that back now. Thank you. Served its purpose. And I'll have to look up Martin Luther, but I think of Martin Luther King too. Like, he had the energy of divinity. Who knows what he was in his personal life? I didn't know him. But he had the energy of divinity, of his dharma, that gave him like power of the word, that came through him that inspired a nation so much that they would have to take him out. And same with like other people in our history, like Joan of Arc. She too had the energy come through her and led France to be a sovereign nation. And what did they do? Burn her at the stake. You know, it's like we have to take those chances though, you know, and to wait and be patient and cultivate that relationship and then serve from it. And yeah, like our lives have probably been lost in the past. There's been great leaders like John F. Kennedy, you know, like there's an energy here that does not want our consciousness to know how unlimited we are.
Mm-hmm. And so with that in mind, as we wrap up, you spoke to now being in a pretty empowered place, in a pretty connected place. And how would you encourage the viewers and listeners to come to that place of their own empowerment?
Mm-hmm. I think one, have faith. Have faith that something is calling you. And that faith will get you to stand up and brush off your knees every time you fall. And there's times that you may need just to take a break and just surround yourself by comfort and niceties for a moment, but build that inner strength and go again. You don't need to go on a retreat. You don't need to even go on a pilgrimage. Like everything that you need is already within you and it's already happening right here, right now. I would break away from patterns, distractions, and trust that there is something that wants you to find it just as much as you want to find it, and that there is a collaboration there. I would say work on healing the past. Forgive yourself, forgive your family, forgive the lineage that you came in through, so those roots of yours are clean, and really honor it so that when the energy comes in, it doesn't get stuck up here, that it can go all the way down. The not damage or challenge, the warning is that we can make meaning happen up here that is a distortion of our ego's perception. It's a dirty lens that the energy of the everything is coming through, and we can misunderstand how the universe is speaking to us and what it's trying to say. But the more pure you are, the more you cleanse and, you know, live in gratitude and a good life, like that is going to allow those things to anchor all the way down into the body. I would also say be patient. You don't have to run to anything. If you feel inspired, that's great, but be patient and like listen, like truly listen. Spend time in quietness to listen. Like you are on your own hero's journey. And if you want something to last in this lifetime, it has to come from the mind of the divine. If it comes from the aberration of the human mind, it will fall eventually, as we can see in our society. We are here to align to that pure, like heaven on earth, bringing that here. So I would say for anyone that is not feeling empowered, to hold faith. The universe is orchestrating to help you, even when it doesn't look like it. And ask, what does this mean? What does this serve? How can I serve? And wait for the response. I find that it's when the response comes and it's true, like you know it. And if you're waffling because you're not sure if that's the response, it's probably not. Like it is trying to find a way to reach you. Dream time is really important because we bypass the egoic mind and we're in the astral field. A lot can happen in the astral field if there's too many blocks in the human mind. And I'll share one last thing from Marina said it in the 9-day vision quest. It might not be hers, but she said, don't believe everything you think. And I think that's really important. Our human mind is constructed to keep us solid in this one incarnation. That is not all I'm doing right now. Like I am a multi-dimensional being that is ultimately everything on this planet, as are you. But my mind makes sure that I'm solidified into this space and time. So don't be mad at it. It's just doing its job to keep you here, but also know how to open that trap door so that you're not imprisoned by it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for all of that. Thank you for your stories. Thank you for all the work you do and everything you bring into the world. And you also work with people in one-on-one capacity. And
yeah.
Do you want to tell people where to find you?
Sure. I have a website, www.GaiaSophiaHealing.com. Gaia is Gaia, Sophia Sophia, then healing. And I do see people in person here in Squamish, and I also see people distantly. And I help to break the mortar, I would say, between the human experience and their divine experience. And it's not for everybody. I'll also say that. I'll say some people that really just want, a cozy, comfortable life in this incarnation, I'm probably not for you. Like, I'm about developing the areas that aren't developed and seeing things that are going to be medicine for your evolution. And that's what interests me. So that's where you can find me.
Yeah, if it's not clear by now, Gaia is definitely a powerful, intuitive being that really supports people along their path. And so I recommend that you reach out to her. And yeah, I'm grateful to walk this path with you.
Thanks. Me too.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment and perhaps sharing with others. And if you are curious about some of the services I offer, you can check out my website, connectionintegration.com. You'll see on there that I offer one-on-one support and guidance based around spiritual and mental wellness. I also offer nature connection experiences and plant medicine retreats throughout the year. Until next time, wishing you much curiosity, wonder, and peace as you open yourself up to the wild, tameless. Be well.